if I write a contract for somebody, let's say just have nothing to do with mediation, I'm writing a business contract for them. I always put a provision in there that says if the parties have a problem, they should go to a mediator first. I don't say me, but anybody go to a
Sure.
mediator first, to try and encourage parties. Don't go right to the courthouse, don't go file a lawsuit immediately. Try and just get in a room together
Yeah.
with a third party who's going to help you, come to an understanding.
Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Spaghetti on the Wall is back with another one. Jonathon Nicol in the house. What's up?
How you doing? Good to see you.
It's good to see you. The Nicol Law Firm, philosopher and attorney and mediator. We're going to get to all of that today. I want to know, give me like a 2-minute background on how you got to where you got.
Good question. I'm going on about 20 years of doing this, but I always have had an interest in, debate and argument and discussion and, thinking about the world, thinking about problems, how do we solve things and all that. And, I went off to college and I was a biology major. And in about 6 minutes, I said, nope, not going to do that, and switched over to philosophy. And so I studied philosophy for undergrad and you got real deep into a lot of German thinking and Greek thinking and all of this ancient stuff and modern stuff. And then, it made sense to translate that over into a law degree. And so I went off and, got my law degree. And, from there have just been learning the court systems and, doing all kinds of different representation, mostly litigation, but, lots of other sort of, transactional and business stuff. And just trying to solve people's problems, which might be on the plaintiff side or the defense side or in the middle as a mediator.
That's really cool, man. This is timely because I am going through this existential crisis, right? It's kind of fun too, right? Because it's just like, you're just sort of questioning a bunch of things and reading about a bunch of things and, religions and things like that. What do you think happens when we die?
Man, that's a book of a book of questions there, really, and an endless amount of answers to that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's a little bit the jury is still out, right? I believe that there's certainly a soul that people have, and that soul is not something that really is made up of molecules. It's something that we really can't explain where it comes from. And
Mm-hmm.
so I believe that soul gets, transferred on and passes through. It may go into an afterlife. It may go into another body or something, but we're really spiritual beings who are having a physical experience, a human experience. And once that human or physical experience ends, well, that spirit goes on somewhere else. To where, I don't know. I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, it's funny, right? I've been introduced to this whole world of like vibrations and energy and things
Sure.
like that. And before I was just like, nah, I don't know about that. But now these days I'm just like, there was a story about the Tacoma Narrows Bridge back in I think the 50s. Are you familiar with this bridge?
Not really.
So the Tacoma Narrows Bridge was built. It was a suspension bridge, and everything was cool until some wind came through that area. And what happened is it hit the resonant frequency of the bridge, and you can look it up. The bridge starts doing this, like metal and concrete, and it's waving
Wow.
like water, right? And it hit the resonant frequency and obviously collapsed. And I was a barbershop singer for like a long time.
Okay.
So harmony, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
harmony was always a thing, right? It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, everything sort of has harmony and everything has a resonant frequency. And that's like when a opera singer sings into a glass, she can make it shatter because it like hits that frequency. So, I'm starting to like start thinking about this like vibrational frequencies and how things vibrate and you know what I mean? And it's like opening up, it's unlocking this whole new thing. So I'm with you on that. I know that there is something the jury is still out on the definition of it, right? And like, you know, all of the books that have been written and the different religions out there and things like that. And it's like, okay, you know, how do I know it's this one? How do I know it's this one? What I do know is that there is something. I just don't know. I just can't define it with the books that we have now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's such a plurality of explanations. You know, you look through history, different religions, even non-religious explanations of what happens, and everybody's got some kind of response, even if some answers are, well, nothing happens, you know, but it's just part of the human condition to, you know, want to think about that and think about, you know, is this time here really all I have? Well, maybe it's all I have in this physical body, but there could be something after. And, you know, it's a question that, you know, I don't think there'll ever really be a solid answer to, because even folks who go and have a near-death experience and come back, you know, there's still some doubt about, you know, where they've been. People do try to dismiss things sometimes, but it's always going to keep us questioning, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I know for sure. So when you spend your days doing mediation, right?
Right.
Is that mainly the thing that you do?
You know, it just depends on the week how busy I am, but I've got a mix of mediation work and more traditional legal work.
And so when we're doing mediation, right, like you're coming in and hopefully creating a win-win situation for two parties that are in disagreement.
Yeah, that's right.
And so how are you using that philosophy degree to help bridge these gaps?
Yeah, I mean, the whole basis for, you know, my interest in philosophy is curiosity, right? And so that's going to lead to asking questions. And if I'm in a mediation, you know, what I want to know up front is, you know, on one side, what are your interests here? What do you care about? What is it that really is driving your decisions, you know, to either litigate this matter or to settle it? And then ask the same questions of the other side, you know, to try and really identify what's driving this dispute, you know, what's really underlying. In some cases, it's pretty obvious, you know, you can learn quickly up front what the issues are. Other times it takes a while to get in and to really understand, you know, what is driving the dispute. But once you start to have an understanding of that and learning really, you know, what the interests are of all the players, well, then you can start to balance and say, okay, you know, you want this, they want that. Let's find something that's going to be a commonality to satisfy those interests.
So are you usually helping more entrepreneurs? Who are the people that you help?
You know, it just depends. For example, connected with the federal court here in the Western District of Missouri. So I'm one of their certified mediators. So I get referred cases from that. You know, the recent ones I can think about are, I've got an employment dispute case, a discrimination case. I have a slip and fall case. I've got a standard sort of business breach of contract case. So a lot of times there are either businesses, you know, who are parties, or individuals who are parties. It could be an individual suing a business or two businesses in a dispute against each other. But, you know, I tell folks, listen, almost any problem can benefit from mediation, right? It doesn't really matter what the problem is. The key is to have that third party there who creates sort of a neutral space and, you know, a safer space for parties to, you know, talk about what their problems are and what their interests are in getting them resolved.
So entrepreneurs that like have partnerships within the organization can call a person like you and hash out, you know, and hash out some differences, which I
Right.
think is great.
Yeah. So, like, let's say, you know, if I write a contract for somebody, let's say just have nothing to do with mediation, I'm writing a business contract for them. I always put a provision in there that says if the parties have a problem, they should go to a mediator first. I don't say me, but anybody, go to a
Sure.
mediator first, you know, to try and encourage parties. Don't go right to the courthouse, you know, don't go file a lawsuit immediately. You know, try and just get in a room together
Yeah.
with a third party who's going to help you, you know, come to an understanding.
I don't necessarily, yeah. I mean, you make a good point because I don't necessarily think people think that. They're just like, this dude is doing me wrong. I'm gonna go sue his ass, right? Like, and then it's just like,
America.
yeah. So you don't really think about, you know, mediation as being like something that an option for you to even, consider. I mean, the lay person, right? Like the entrepreneur that's, just sort of operating and isn't really thinking about, when shit goes wrong, like, hey, let me bring on a mediator. And then like even the phrase mediator has this feeling of, yeah, I'm not, it's not a negative thing, right? It's not, I'm not going to sue you. It's just like, let's get somebody in here that doesn't know us, that can look at it from, from two different perspectives. And let me ask you that. So you're not repping either party, right? Because once you start repping somebody, then there's bias, right?
That's right. I have to be neutral. I can't have any connection. It's okay if I know them. A lot of the attorneys who use me, I know on a personal or professional basis, but I can't have any interest in the mediation. So I'm not a judge. I don't have any power to make a party do or not do something. I'm just there to try and facilitate a discussion.
You said lawyers use you as well. How do they use you?
That's most of my clients actually. So, for example, the Western District of Missouri, the federal court here, I'm on their list of mediators, and so if there's a civil case that's filed in the Western District of Missouri, let's say an employment discrimination case or a breach of contract case, there are attorneys who represent the plaintiff and defendant in that case. Those attorneys are probably going to get an order from the court that says you should go and try mediation. So in the first 60 days, go try mediation. Those attorneys will come to me on behalf of their clients. So most of the mediation I do is entirely in the context of a litigated dispute. And so each side has attorneys. And so, there'll be a separate room with the plaintiff and their attorneys, the defendant and their attorneys. I'll go and talk to each side, and go back and forth and, maybe bring them together and try and talk about it. So most of what I'm doing is within the context of a legal dispute.
So I'm in one room with my attorney, right? And we're like, tell that guy I said, shut the fuck up.
Yep.
You're all like, well, let's not say that.
Right.
It would probably be better if you came across a little bit more like this and be like, all right, yeah, that sounds about right. Go ahead and tell them that. Right. And then you go over there and you tell them that. And then they go, yeah, all right, well, how about this? Is that pretty much how it goes?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's a pretty formal process, at least when I'm doing it through the courts. I have them both, send me a written statement ahead of time, 5 pages. What's this case about? What do you want out of it? Why hasn't it settled yet? Tell me those key issues. And then I'll talk to the attorneys before the mediation, to try and set the table. What are some things to look out for? And then when we get into the actual mediation on the day of, sometimes we'll start all in the same room. That's pretty rare anymore. Usually parties just want to be separate, and then I go back and forth between. And so my job is to go in and for the plaintiff, let's say they have a demand, they want $1 million or whatever. I'll try and, work them down a little bit and say, that number is really high. Let's start with something lower. And here's the reason. So I'll kind of take the role of the defense attorney in that room to bring them down. But then when I go over to the defense attorney and say, okay, they wanted $1 million, but I got them down to 800, let's start there. And I think your number needs to be up here. And I'll try and just kind of work that process over and over. It doesn't always have to be money. It could be a certain performance that they want of a contract, or they want a piece of property, or, some kind of solution like that.
That sounds fun. Are you having fun with this?
I do. Well, I mean, I have fun with it mostly because it's really the best use of my time at this point.
Right.
I have individual legal clients, companies, and businesses. But, when you're doing that, especially if you're in litigation, you're only on one side. You can only help your client. When I'm a mediator, I can help the entire problem. It doesn't matter because I don't have a client there, right? My duty is to everyone, to try and get them as close as possible to a resolution.
What happens if people don't use mediation? Is it forced upon them by the court?
So, in federal court here, they are ordered to go to mediation.
Okay.
In some other courts, it's voluntary. Other courts, some state courts can order parties to mediation. But, if it's voluntary, they don't have to do it. And even when it is required of them to do it, they may not really participate in good faith. They might want to just come in, check the box, and then get out of there after 30 minutes.
Right. Let me ask you this. So how do you get paid? You get paid by both parties?
Correct.
Okay. So it's like a
Yeah,
50-50 split.
usually it's 50-50. Sometimes there might be a reason why it's got to be a different percentage. Every now and then, parties will negotiate something where only one side will pay the fees, but usually it's 50-50 paid by the parties.
And so in your experience, when people don't use a mediator, well, two questions. First
Sure.
question is, in like a personal injury case, right? Say somebody was killed in an accident and they're suing the insurance company, right?
Right.
Do you come in those like cases at all?
Sometimes.
Okay. And you coming in to like say, hey, yeah, this is where we're at, and basically what you're asking for is probably based on what you have here. It's not gonna fly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to, focus in on the interest in the case. And let's say, with your example, the plaintiff, they want to get paid out from the insurance company. The insurance company wants to pay as little as possible, right? Maybe they don't want to pay anything. Maybe they think there's some defense that, absolves them of liability. Well, I'll walk in, I'll talk to the plaintiff and say, okay, you've got these challenges to getting to your payday. Here's all the things that you have to overcome before you can actually get a check from the insurance company. Are you willing, to go that whole course? And then, talking to the defendant, I'll say, listen, you guys want to assert this defense? Well, do you understand all the risk that you bear by continuing with this case? And it'd be a really bad look for the insurance company if you don't pay this out. So again, it's just trying to, you know, get people to back off a little bit from the sort of extreme demands, the extreme adversity that's inherent in the litigation process, and instead say, okay, let's take a step back. Do you all really want to spend the next 3 years of your life in litigation? Probably not. You probably want to get the lawyers out of your life. Well, let's have some peace and finality and get this resolved today with a written agreement.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Um, have you, because we do day in the life videos, and I'm always curious, do you see those moving the needle at all in these cases?
What do you mean?
So like if somebody's been catastrophically injured or there's been a death, and we'll shoot what it's like now in,
Oh.
the victims' lives, right? And they're using that. Have you seen that affect the case at all?
I haven't seen that personally in anything, but, I could imagine that if a case was that far developed, let's say down the road a little bit, and there'd been a pretty good workup, because sometimes mediation happens at the beginning of a case, other times it's in the middle, other times it might be, a second or third try before trial. And so if there is a plaintiff who's gone ahead and had a video like that made in anticipation of trial or something, showing that to a defense counsel or insurance company, could have an effect. People, think, oh, well, we've got a big insurance company on, one side and they don't have any emotions. That's not true. I mean, there are people who are making decisions, who are the ones that hold, the pen for that checkbook. And if you can appeal to them in a certain way, well, that could help out the plaintiff.
That makes sense. Are you allowed to use that video in court? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on the jurisdiction and on the case. Sometimes that sort of evidence is considered, prejudicial. It might be, too much. It might over dramatize actually what happened, but there are certainly accident recreation videos that are allowed.
makes sense. So tell me a story, and I'm sure you have many, but tell me a story of somebody. You don't have to talk about the names, obviously, but a story of a a situation where you came in and like both parties were kind of happy, or not happy, but just were pleased with the outcome, where it was like sort of a win-win situation.
Yeah, I mean, the win-win concept is a little tough with mediation. What I mean by that is if somebody comes in and let's just use another accident example or slip and fall or something. I had a recent case involving Starbucks. So somebody, let's say they come in, they have a stack of medical bills, right? And then Starbucks is on the other side and they're saying, well, we want to write as small of a check as possible. If that matter gets to a resolution, it's probably because the plaintiff is going to accept less than they wanted at the beginning of the day, and then the defendant is going to pay more than they wanted to pay at the end of the day, right? And
Right.
so they're both going to make some kind of allowance for the other side, right? And so that's really what happens in mediate. That's really the magic of mediation. A mediation isn't when a plaintiff comes in asking you for $1 million and the defendant says, yes, I'll pay you $1 million. That's not mediation. That's just a settlement, right?
Right.
The challenge is when, you've got to bridge that ground. And it can be challenging because there are folks who can get really stuck to their positions and really entrenched in them. So what I find, it depends on every case. They're all different because again, it all comes down to the humans who are involved in this case and what are their personalities, what are their tolerances, what are their interests, what do they care about, and so I just find what always serves me well is being totally upfront with anybody in a mediation and, not being afraid to take that position, um, that I think is going to help push things along. Because again, I don't have a horse in the race, right? I just
Right.
want it to get done. I want to get them totally resolved or closer to resolution than when they walked in the door. And so, because I don't have to advocate for a client on either side, I can just try whatever I want, and be creative and make things happen.
What makes a good mediator to you?
You've got to listen. That's the number one. Some mediators out there, they've been doing it for a while. They think they know everything. They think that they're more of a judge rather than a mediator,
Mm.
and they impose their judgment on the parties. And in the right cases, yeah, that can work. But overall, it's not going to carry the day. You've got to be able to listen to everybody who's involved, and you need to listen to not just what they're saying, but really, in some cases, the emotion that's underlying it, or some of their some of their feelings that are underlying it. You've got a lot of angry litigants out there. You've got, an individual who was really mad at a company because the company screwed him over for whatever reason. Or you've got two businesses who maybe they have a long, positive, ongoing relationship and they want to continue that ongoing relationship after this dispute, no matter what happens. So in that case, I've got to understand that, okay, this isn't really a head-to-head adversarial process. I understand that it is, a plaintiff and a defendant, but they actually like each other and something just went sideways here. So let me be sensitive to that, and find a way to solve it without destroying, a long relationship.
Nah, it makes sense. That's really cool. I think that'd be fun to like come in and really like investigate because you're like detective, you're also like counselor. There's a lot of facets.
It's great. I can ask, any question I want. I don't have anything to hide, right? I don't have any agenda that I'm trying to get out. And so I can really be, and that's where it kind of goes back to that curiosity, and just really finding out, what's making this party tick, what makes them run, and why haven't they come to a resolution yet? What's the holdup? Sometimes it is nothing sexy. Sometimes it's just one side won't pay enough. Not everything is money, but it's easiest to talk about money.
Sure.
But other times, there's a large non-monetary component. So let's say, for example, there's a unique piece of property. It could be personal or real property that one side isn't just going to, hand over to the other side. And so then you got to challenge. How do you possibly take the place of a unique piece of property like that? But that's just kind of on the day of the life.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you do this nationally or just locally?
So yeah, I can do it nationally. Some jurisdictions, it depends. You may need a special admission or a special certification, but mediation is a little more flexible with that. I focus on doing it in the Kansas City area for the courts that I'm signed up with here, but I offer my services, anywhere. And again, it's more of a skill set where I do have specific knowledge in lots of areas of the law, after litigating for as long as I have and doing all the different type of law work that I have. But a lot of times the skills of mediation are transferable to different situations. So you could pop me into a situation where I may not be an expert on the law. However, I understand the dynamics of mediation and the interest and can apply those skills, no matter where or who's involved.
That makes sense. How do people find you?
I've got a website, which is nicolmediation.com. That's kind of the key point. Also, LinkedIn, Jonathon Nicol has got links to everything else. My law firm is nicolfirm.com. So I run a mediation practice and I run a traditional law firm as well.
Very cool. When you say traditional law firm, what like personal injury or?
So I do mostly business law is the best way to describe it. And that can be litigation, state court, federal court. I started my career in California, so I'm admitted in California, Missouri, and Kansas courts, plus federal courts. So business law, but I represent anywhere from individual entrepreneurs, small business owners, up to larger companies, who are import-export companies based in New York City, and I've got California clients and all that. But I do litigation, and then I do kind of more problem solving if they need help with contracts, or I had a call today about a cease and desist letter, and I just have all kinds of problems that my clients bring to me, and I'm usually able to solve it or to get them to the right person.
And so they hire you, I guess, on a retainer basis?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. And so whatever business issues they have, then they can just call you about it. And you're the advisor. You're the consigliere.
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome. Jonathon, I really appreciate you being here today. You guys, if you're in that area and you are in need of some mediation help, but if you're also an entrepreneur and you're looking for, an attorney that can help you with your business questions, highly recommend having a business attorney if you're in business, because there's so many things that you just don't know that can just bite you.
That's true.
At any moment. So
Right.
Good to have that. I appreciate you being here, man.
You got it. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment for all of your video production needs, podcasts, organic social. We got you. Keep listening, keep watching, and we'll see y'all next time.